by Prince Sihanouk, still in China.
We can only fight and fight till, the Americans accept to withdraw from our country. And I am optimistic so far as the defeat of the Americans is concerned. It will be inevitable.
On January 22nd, 1971, the Vietnamese communists hit Phnom Penh for the first time, destroying ammunition dumps and oil supplies, and wiping out the Cambodian Air Force. Within days, help arrived. 20 American soldiers flew in from Vietnam, carrying guns but wearing civilian clothes.
They formed what they called the Military Equipment Delivery Team, MEDTC. By the time they got themselves organized, they replaced my little group of myself and 4 people with a general and about 113 people. And in effect, they took over most of the military activities for the FANC headquarters, which was what I hoped to preclude. The Yankees running all over the place and making all decisions and providing all guidance.
Only American air power and funds kept Lon Nol's army from defeat. No Americans were dying in Cambodia as they still were in Vietnam. For the moment, Congress went along with Nixon's war.
Now let's look at Cambodia. We've made a conscious decision not to send American troops in. There are no American combat troops in Cambodia. There are no American combat advisors in Cambodia. There will be no American combat troops or advisors in Cambodia. We will aid Cambodia. Cambodia is the Nixon doctrine in its purest form. Vietnam was in violation of the Nixon doctrine, because in Cambodia what we are doing is helping the Cambodians to help themselves.
The doctrine was also tested against the Ho Chi Minh Trail in southern Laos. In early 1971, South Vietnamese forces, using American equipment, moved against the communist supply routes. The Laotian government was not informed in advance.
The Prime Minister said to me, "I don't know anything about this either. I only just learned about the operation from the American ambassador." I answered, "This is quite serious." He replied, "Yes, quite serious. Military operations are being conducted in our country. It is very serious. But what can we do? They have taken the decision. All we can do is lodge a protest. That is all."
The United States planned the invasion and gave it air and artillery support. But without American combat troops beside them, the South Vietnamese forces fled in disarray. They took 3,000 casualties in the first week alone. In Laos, the Nixon doctrine had failed. But in Cambodia, it was still intact. As American aid poured in, corrupt Cambodian officers invented phantom soldiers. A quarter of Cambodia's army existed only as names on pay slips, endangering the lives of those who fought on in understrength units. In 1973, after 3 years' exile in China, Sihanouk went into the Khmer Rouge zone of Cambodia.
King Norodom Sihanouk embraces Khieu Samphan, Vice Prime Minister of the Royal Government of National Union of Cambodia and Commander-in-Chief of the People's National Liberation Armed Forces. The enemy say that Mr. Khieu Samphan has been dead for several years. But here you can see him chatting cordially with Samdech Sihanouk.
Sihanouk also embraced another Khmer Rouge leader, Pol Pot. Sihanouk knew he was only a figurehead. The Khmer Rouge leaders planned to remold Cambodia into a rural communist utopia and would spare no life to do it. When they gain power, Sihanouk said, they will spit me out like a cherry stone. They were using Sihanouk's prestige to mobilize peasant support.
The Khmer Rouge leaders said that important cadres like us were communists. The people believed in Sihanouk, but they said that we who had joined the party should not believe in him. Starting with candidates for party membership, there was this kind of education. No one should have faith in Sihanouk, but they still allowed the people to believe in him. You see, there was public education and covert education. If we still believed in Sihanouk, they explained, there was no point in our making revolution. Sihanouk and the revolution, they told us secretly, were enemies of each other.
If at any time the Khmer Rouge had not aligned themselves with Sihanouk, they would not have been able to carry on their fight. They wouldn't have been able to challenge Lon Nol. That's why they got Sihanouk on their side and put him up front. They made him front man because his subjects had admired and respected him for so long.
In less than 3 years, the Khmer Rouge forces had grown from 3,000 to 60,000. The Khmer Rouge were no longer completely dependent on their Vietnamese communist allies. America stepped up the bombing. During 6 months of 1973, more than 250,000 tons were dropped on Cambodia.
The ordinary people were terrified by the bombing and the shelling, never having experienced war, and sometimes they shit in their pants when the big bombs and shells came. 200 to 400 shells would fall in each attack, and some people became shell-shocked, just like their brains were completely shattered. Even after the shelling had stopped, they couldn't hold down a meal. Their minds just froze up, and they would wander around mute, not talking for 3 or 4 days. Terrified and half crazy, they would believe anything they were told. And because there was so much shelling, they believed whatever the Khmer Rouge told them.
The fear was pervasive. Everybody was scared. But the real Reds weren't dying. They weren't being hit. The Khmer Rouge, who were doing the fighting, had dug bomb shelters. So whenever the planes came, they jumped into their holes, while the people sometimes didn't even have time to get out of their houses.
The Khmer Rouge would say that the purpose of the bombing was to completely destroy the country, not simply just to win the war, but to annihilate the population, and that it was only because we were taking cover, moving around to avoid the bombing, that some of us were surviving. So they used the bombing, the bomb craters and the bomb shrapnel, to educate the people politically, to make the people hate and be enraged at the Americans.
Okay, we'd like to go ahead and get that same target again. It looks like it still might be lucrative. We can see some stuff down there. And if it's okay with you, we'll just go ahead and put this set of air in on that target and see if we can put the next one on the first target, okay?
Okay, the Mike 01 Hotel 1 Street. There's the Charlie Mike 01. Will you put the sun bomb over there, sir? And move to the number 1 target, please.
Despite congressional restrictions, the U.S. Embassy in Phnom Penh coordinated bombing targets. The extent of Nixon's secret bombing was not uncovered by Congress until July 1973, 4 years after it had started. Nixon had waged war in Cambodia without congressional approval. It prompted angry congressional reaction and led to the first call for Nixon's impeachment.
No, the president does